anyhow, he wore many hats while he was there, and security was a big issue. Boeing had their own security, plus the Army was there and screened everybody that came and went, and you had to pass rigid requirements to get in there, but still, sabotage was a big issue in World War II. Probably still is in warfare. And so they caught most of the people trying to get in and caught them before they get through the gate. However, a good example of in-house sabotage would be Dad was tooling around on his scooter one day, working, of course, and he went by the skeleton of a B-29. It was the first thing they have to do in the manufacture of a huge airplane. They didn't have the skin on it yet. The skin would be the outer aluminum surface. So it was just a framework. And he saw a guy up on the wing with a in-house drill, marked property of Boeing, they found out later. And he was drilling holes, and Dad recognized, why is he drilling holes in in the tubing on the wing? He took his question to the engineers, who put their heads together and said, there's no good reason to be putting holes in those tubes. And from there he went to got the security, armed guards, and he said the guy disappeared real quick. They don't know whatever happened to him. Probably buried out there in the Kansas desert someplace. But he was a saboteur. The engineers had decided that drilling the holes in where he did would cause the wing to weaken. Now, it would work for a while, and they figured maybe after 1,000 hours or something of vibrations, that's where the wing would break and crash the plane. So you can see where the problem with saboteurs was. They aren't always obvious. They didn't have to bring anything in. You had to be able to recognize the danger they could inflict just with what they had, like a Boeing-issued drill. Dad did many things while he was there. He almost had to live there. My mother joined him working there. She had called back when they made a call out for employees. They were desperate for people to work there because all the young men were going in the service and were not available to work in manufacturing of any kind. So my mother had called back home to Nicollet, Minnesota, and recruited her 14-year-old sister to come and take care of me and my sister. My sister's 4 years older than I, so she didn't need as much care as I did. I was 1 or 2 years old at the time. And they didn't have any daycare set up at the company. I mean, now they probably have daycare centers all over the Boeing plant, but not then yet. And so both of my parents were working long hours. The normal shift in Boeing aircraft during the war was a 60-hour work week. It would be 6 10-hour days. So you can see they spent a lot of time. And Dad spent more than that. He was almost on overtime every day, trying to get the planes and everything functioning together, coordinating everything. He also had a quest. He told me this several times. He said he was working so hard on making everything safe in that airplane because it was so huge. There was a lot of safety factors involved. And the reason he was working so hard was his own brother, my Uncle Bob, who was my dad's younger brother, had enlisted out of college. He was going to Gustavus Adolphus College in St. Peter. Bob always said that his entire class, all of the boys, enlisted the day after Pearl Harbor. And he eventually volunteered for the Army Air Corps, became an officer, and again volunteered to learn the ins and outs of the B-29. They had set up a training post, I guess you'd call it, in Wichita at the Boeing plant. And so my Uncle Bob was to become part of a crew of a B-29. My dad knew that, and he said he didn't want his brother going up into anything unsafe, or anybody else for that matter. And so his mission and purpose, he decided, was to make them the safest thing they could. It's hard enough being in one of those situations and being shot at. You want to make sure your plane is sound enough to begin with. He worked many hours and was a diligent worker for Boeing. And as I grew up and looked at his life, I realized what he had sacrificed in those days with time and energy and everything. Dad himself said that he kicked himself many times for not staying with Boeing, making a career out of it. But you have to know that when the war was over and peace was declared, all of the millions of people, all of the servicemen, all of the workers in manufacturing and so forth that were working for the war effort wanted to go home. And so did he. So he left Boeing at the end of the war, as did everybody else, because they didn't quit making B-29s, but they quit making them on the volume that they had been for the war effort. Dad went on to lead a life of, he was a good man in everything he did. And starting with those efforts, wartime efforts, that's why I always considered him one of my heroes.